generous friend. He's on a list of the adults who have met my mother, small list. And no one made my mom feel as seen as Dan did. He's one of 2 human beings who knitted me a scarf as a gift of friendship. He asked me once what my favorite story was, and I said, the monster at the end of this book, the book about Grover. And he handed me, a week later, a framed sheet of paper with a string of centered punctuation marks running down the middle of the page. It was all of the punctuation from that book with all of the words removed. That framed sheet of commas, periods, question marks, and exclamation points became part of a language that only he and I could share because we were the only people who understood what it meant. It was kind of a secret language of brothers. For both of us, our education was an escape into a life we never imagined possible, a life of purpose. For Dan, that purpose was teaching communication, which for Dan was about teaching students to express themselves. Dan believed wholeheartedly in living a life in which the fullest and greatest expression of self was the highest goal. Dan also found purpose in his discovery of Christ. I wasn't always comfortable with that. And in one of those conversations you have with someone when you're not really ready to talk about their mortality, he told me, and David Gore was there too, that he attributed his survival beyond his prognosis as a gift of the power of prayer. And I agreed, and I told him that every member of the Church of Satan I knew had prayed for him every day. Dan looked at Gore and said, I don't believe that. And Gore replied, you don't believe they're praying for you? Or you don't believe Beard has friends in the Church of Satan? He said, I know Beard has friends in the Church of Satan. And we laughed. Other times, Dan shared with me a feeling my grandmother used to share with me, that fear that the afterlife wouldn't go well for me if I didn't discover Christ the way he had. I never found those particular arguments compelling, but I found the love and care embedded within them heartbreaking. It was as if there was a love someone gave me that I could never return, because my achingly materialist self can only love you while you're alive. But Dan, I still love you even today as you are gone. Dan made me think about God a lot and read a lot. Now thinking about God makes me think about Dan. This is a passage from a book by a theologian that makes me think about Dan. It frequently happens that in listening to a piece of music, at first we don't hear the deep, fundamental tone, the sure stride of the melody on which everything else is built. We are deafened by the detail, the veritable sea of sounds. It's only after we have accustomed ourselves in one magical stroke, a single unified world emerges from the confused welter of sounds. And when this happens, we suddenly realize with delight and amazement that the fundamental tone was always there, resounding before, that all along the melody had been giving order and unity. For that theologian, he says, we see God in the confusion of forces. What was a confusion of forces? Dan helped me and others to hear the melody in life, to see God in the confusion of forces. Off, so I can't see where Beverly sat down, but I don't think I can get this part. I was challenged too by the tally of good days he kept, thousands of them. Days when I knew he struggled, days when I would have considered cursing the God of my grandmother if I had faced such challenges and had faith. I initially attributed it to optimism I could never have, and I felt that as a gulf between us. But Dan's definition of a good day wasn't an easy one or an uncomplicated one. It was a day in which he lived according to his values. At no point on a good day did he hide who he was or make choices inauthentic to him. In a good day, he went to bed knowing that he lived according to his values. I remember that. I will always remember that. And since I met you, Dan, I've tried to live like that. Thank you.